Hi everyone, nice to be here. Sunset set almost, so I know it's been a long day. This won't be that long, I'm going to give you about 15 minutes. We're going to start with a disclaimer, because it's government and it's serious. I am not here from the government. I've just left to go and study. I'm doing an MBA, which is a bit controversial in digital and tech. I'm going to go see how the other side live, learn some things. But I wanted to speak to you based on my experiences at GDS and tell you a little bit about the other side of the thing that affects your products, and I think that's your people and culture. You've just heard from a panel who very much said, this is how we work, this is how our product team ships, how it is, and that's very much how we work where I was from. But I did notice on our journey a few things along the way. So let's see if I can figure out the difference between left and right. Woo! So I think we're approaching the point where culture isn't necessarily a burned word, but we're definitely getting towards overused. Things like the foosball table and the free coffee have gone from being a recognition that we aren't automatons and we should be able to have some fun and be ourselves in the office to kind of a hollow promise that people are starting to think, yeah, you're just window dressing there really. So when I talk about culture, I guess I am talking about your values, your mission, how you work, your working practices and your structure. But I'm mindful as well that this is a word that we bandy around a lot as though you can just, buy it, make it. So what I'm going to do is take you through the story of the product I worked on, which was called gov.uk. For the one person in the room who helped write most of it, I'm sorry, this will be an introduction. For everybody else, there's kind of four major stages. So this is the UK government's website in the very beginning. So there'll be 4 stages to that I'm going to get you through. So in the beginning, before GDS, every single agency and part of government had its own website. Those websites were structured the way the organisation was. They were written in opaque policy language. You had to know which bit of government you wanted to talk to go and talk to them. If I wanted to find out about gangs, is that the Home Office? Is that the Department for Education? I don't know. I had to go out there, and the only thing that was similar between all of them was that they were all quite different. Yeah. Not the best user experience. So along comes GDS. It's a small organisation, it's agile, it's not governmenty at all, and it does this. It builds one single website for all of government. It trawls through every bit of content on all of those websites and pulls out only what's necessary and what's relevant. It simplifies it. And it comes up with something quite important. It says we're going to design with users at the centre of this rather than government. So I talked about how before the websites were structured the way that government was. This is what we call, a guy called Conway came up with this law, which is actually about systems and tends to replicate in committees or organisations. And it says this: the things you build are the products of the way that you communicate inside your organisation. So the way government talked to itself and saw itself was how it presented itself in the world. So along comes this force and it decides that it's going to design thinking only about the needs of the people who build it. It will be simpler, clearer and faster. So in this early stage, very small organisation going super, super fast because we've only got a couple of years before the Parliament ends. We've got some buy-in, we've got to prove that government can actually not end up on the front page for another IT disaster and can properly do digital. So this is it. This is the homepage as of yesterday. It's responsive design. It won awards. Got a black pencil for being nice and simple and easy to use. And it changes every day. It's iterating all the time. We ship, sometimes we deploy about 10 times a day, so it's always changing. So at this stage, on our culture and our people, one of the things we do is have a very clear, meaningful mission. It's very easy to get behind. We're here to make it easy for people who have to do business with the state, who don't have a choice about where else to go, to make it good. It's very, very easy to get people behind this. So, sorry, I'm not going to throw that text to you till I've explained it. It's clear, it's simple, and it's easy for people to get behind. This is what I'd like to call a bad example of a mission. I'm going to give you a minute to digest that. So I'm at business school at the moment. I speak this language now. I never use it. What I would say here is I don't know what they do. I have no idea. I don't know what their values are. It's kind of generic. It's a generic instruction to do everything right. But I couldn't measure my work against this. I couldn't tell whether this was something important. So I think it's incredibly important that you influence your culture by having something that's clear. It's got a bit of personality and it tells people what you're trying to achieve. When I was at Virgin Atlantic at the time, they had a mission that said, we want to grow a profitable airline where people love to fly and people love to work. And in that, they had their business objective, their value for their staff, and the fact that there was a bit of fun there as well, that there was some love and some growth in it. And I think that's an incredibly important way you can influence your culture. Hire people who match your values. Really easy. Small startup, great. Want to come change the world? Yeah, absolutely. We only need 20 of us, no problem. Really nice, easy thing to do. This is kind of just a snapshot of us and some of the silly cultural things we do. These are our mission patches. Every time you do something, you get a sticker to say you're part of the team. So it was easy at the beginning. It was very to say, come along, be part of our things. You have to be disruptive. You have to be willing to move fast. You have to be aligned to this mission. And that worked really, really well with us at the start. My final point from this stage was give an autonomous team a problem to solve. So this was a bit about what they were saying earlier about aims. We don't go, I'd like to have a yellow website with 3 boxes on the side because we hear that's what people like. You set the problem and then you leave the team there to solve it. This was kind of easy for us because even though we're in government, no one saw us coming. They didn't really believe it was going to happen or it was going to pull off or necessarily know the impact of digital. We were just building a website. They didn't realize it was the front door to digitally transforming how people interact with the state, all the services and things. So we were lucky there in that any decision that had to be made could be made within the team and it could be made quickly. We used a lot of data, a lot of user research, but it was always kind of that pace and that ability to solve the problems themselves. Very overused because it's brilliant. I'm sure you've all seen the Spotify engineering culture video. And this talks about the perils of when you have autonomy, but low alignment. People are just milling around, not sure what to do. And if you have high alignment, we all know where we're going, but low autonomy, people start feeling like they're the monkey with the typewriter and you've said, go build this piece of code, do this thing for me. I just think that's a lovely illustration of that. Okay, so we did it. Under 2.5 years, over 300 organizations were spoken to, and a single website was completed by the day we said it would. But we'd grown. The website had grown. We were up to 12 million weekly visits. The model that we built didn't fit anymore. The users were a massive user base, the team was bigger, and we were absolutely exhausted. We'd been relying on some incredible heroes who had got up at 2 in the morning when the thing went down, or worked tirelessly through the night to get it done, to write those final pieces of content. And the culture started to wear thin. We found we were saying things that we'd always said, but they weren't true anymore. And as I said earlier, with your ping pong table or your foosball table, people have a funny way of knowing when it's just lip service. And this is possibly the most important point I'd like to make, and that is that you get what you do, not what you say. We created this idea of a fire break. At the end of the project, we said, right, we're going to take a month off. We're still going to work, but we're going to pause because we realise there's a big difference between building a thing and running a thing. And we're going to take a month where you can work on anything you want, as long as it benefits gov.uk. And that means you get to, you could work on something that's learning, you could work on something that's been bothering you that you didn't have time to go fix. The product owner said, no, that's not important, we've just got to get this thing done. Or you could try out a new idea. Incredibly productive time, and it was our way of kind of reinvesting and saying, A, we know how hard you've worked, we're going to breathe out for a moment. And B, we're going to regroup and think about what our culture and our values are for the future, and how we need to structure ourselves to make that work. So multidisciplinary teams are amazing. We've always worked in multidisciplinary teams mostly, with 1 or 2 exceptions, and it really came out in this time. They're good for the same reason we like general diversity. If you get a bunch of people with different points of view in a room, they can build off each other's ideas in ways you didn't expect. If you do this within your culture, you end up having these incredible synergies as well. Oh God, I just said synergy. Business school will be pleased. So yeah, I was just going to say, some of the things that came out of that fire break time were brilliant. We had a whole new way of approaching navigation within the site. We had a way that improved how we actually shipped our code, brought it down from like 10 steps to far, far fewer, and a really fun thing where one of our junior developers came up with a thing where you could just type in gov.uk/random and it would take you to any page, which was how we found out about the micropigs, which is great. So final phase, new normal. Here we are, end of that time. We've spent some time and energy bringing ourselves together, becoming one team again, but we've got to go run this bit of critical national infrastructure. We haven't been immune, though, to this Conway's law that says that the way you communicate internally is the thing that you get out there. So because we went so fast, we had to build all the things at the same time. So you're running 2 content management systems in parallel that are duplicating and doing things differently. We've got this massive site, and suddenly it's quite difficult to change things because we've built all these bits together and they aren't actually talking to each other. They're not nicely architected. Also, we've got everything together for the first time. It's only when you see every word the government ever wrote in one room that you can realise the complexity of the stuff that you have in there. How do you deal with people who need to find very niche, specific content, or people who just want to know, where do I pay my tax? So we need to do this re-architect. A couple of things I learned along the way. Now, this is a really tough one for me. I have a tendency to want to bring every single person with me. No man left behind, inclusive, yay, culture, no. This goes back to hire with your values. You have to be really honest with yourself about what the organisation is and what it needs to be. Your culture and your values and the way you work need to fit the product you're making. If that's a nuclear reactor, that's going to be very different to a piece of software that changes every day. So I think you need to be recognised when it's time for good people to move on, the people that you are able to bring with you, how to do that, and how to keep hiring even when you're growing and it's big and it's hard to find that perfect marketing director. I think it's important to resist doing that because in the end, if you dilute your culture or dilute your values, you end up with competing factions, and that's kind of where we ended up. In my opinion, in some ways, we would have one part of the culture who took responsibility if they saw a problem in their area or elsewhere, they would go about fixing it. And another part of the culture who knew that they had to ask permission, that there had to be an instruction, and the instruction would be handed down, and then they would do the thing. And those two things grated against each other and created a confusion that people felt and contributed to how we kind of felt in the working place. So that's, if you don't work so well together as a team, you might want to notice it. The next one is, I talked about autonomy. The way we'd set our teams up, when it was very small, it was easy because all the decision makings were in one small team. Then the way we'd structured during the build meant that people were focusing on very specific tasks. But what we noticed was that people didn't actually own problems end to end. So I would say to you, I need a way for people to more easily find content. But then you'd have to liaise with 6 or 7 different teams. How could you get this thing done if it wasn't part of your destiny? So we really had to level up on autonomy and create these kind of networked teams where you own the whole problem. So for from a technical point of view, that meant you owned an application from the front end right to the back end, rather than this weird distinction we'd created where you kind of had a front end and a back end team. But that also meant we needed to create a place where people communicated a lot better. Because if you're in your little silos and doing your own things, you miss the opportunity to do really good stuff. So coming to the end, it's an incredibly high-level view of just some things I noticed along the way of when we were at different sizes and when we were at different stages, the things that affected us and that changed how we acted and how it actually affected our product. So when we were small, it was easy, and as we got bigger, it got harder, and you could see all the way through the changes that were there. So I talked a bit at the beginning about product management, and I kind of want to say to you, the message to leave you with is your organisation is your product, or you can treat it as such. You can literally product manage your own organisation. I would say you need to design with your users at the centre. The same way you do design your products, you do user testing, you do user research, and you do it all the time, because we were heads down delivering for so long that we never looked up and realised we'd slightly underinvested in our culture and it had got away from us. But if you're doing this all the time, then you have that in mind. Iterate often, use data, use analysis, test your hypotheses out. It's exactly the same thing, and it's important to do it all the time. And I'd say count what you've done. You're only ever judged in the world on the product that you've built and released, not on the press releases of the things that you'll say you're going to do. So you're counted on what you've done. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. People will lose faith in you. It's incredibly important, I think, to create a world where if you say you're going to do something, you do that so that people can have it. So, yeah, not what you've done or say you'll do is the important thing. And do it even at the points where you feel like we don't have time, this is important, we've got a big deadline, we've got to ship. If you build this with you as you go, you can meaningfully and mindfully create a product and a culture that mean that you can grow and sustain, and that your product will reflect the things it needs to, and you won't have to go backwards to fix things or have those crazy painful moments of reset. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.